Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Um, it is 6:05, and if you are joining us live, I want to take a moment to welcome you to this presentation. And also, we are recording the presentation for those of you who are joining us via watching the recording later. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. My name is Joanna Mummert, and I have been a financial coach for the past 20 years. And I began supporting small business entrepreneurs in 2015 as an instructor for English and Spanish business courses offered through Ventures. And you'll see that Ventures is one of the partners that is here present tonight, partnering with BECU. And Ventures is a Seattle-based nonprofit that empowers aspiring entrepreneurs with limited resources and unlimited potential. So we provide access to business training, capital, coaching, and hands-on learning opportunities for entrepreneurs. And over the last couple of years, I've been working especially with local businesses in the Seattle area as they recover from the pandemic and all of the different economic issues that came about through that time period. So we're super happy to be partnering with BECU with this training opportunity. And I'm just gonna see here if I can mute. Sorry about that. I thought everybody was going to be muted. Okay. So BECU is focused on helping their business members succeed financially in all aspects of their business journey. So part of that success is offering education and information that businesses need to make crucial business decisions. And through partnering with Ventures, just like with this evening's presentation, they can provide content and education to their members and to prospective members as well. And together with Ventures, BECU hopes to reach far into the communities they serve to provide free and relevant information to every business and to every person with a dream of business ownership. So BECU and Ventures is people helping people. So again, welcome if you're joining live, and also to those who are watching the recording later. So this evening, I'm going to share with you the agenda. We're going to be covering kind of a broad scope of information when it comes to looking at all of the key considerations for selecting a business entity. So we're going to start off talking about those first steps, considering common business structures, factors for consideration when you're evaluating the different types and which one is going to be best for your business, the basic requirements for opening an LLC in Washington State. We're going to go over steps for corporate formation and also whether or not you need to register your business with the state of Washington. We'll cover some fees and expenses, and then we'll wrap up at the end with next steps. So my goal is I'm going to be presenting for about an hour, and I will pause probably halfway through to check any questions that have come into the chat, to address any of those questions. So I just recommend if you're listening to the presentation, maybe jot down the questions that you have or put them in the chat feature so that I can review them at a good time for doing so. So I'd like it to be as interactive as possible, but probably a lot of information is going to be covered as we go through the presentation, some of the future slides. And also keep in mind that we do have a representative from BECU here with us this evening. So if you have questions that are specific to BECU and the services they provide, that person can help answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So no worries, we have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end if I don't address your question during the presentation itself. Here is my disclaimer. So the content provided in this webinar is for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be legal advice. because I'm not an attorney and I'm not an accountant, but I do have a lot of experience that I bring to the table. And so the information that I'm sharing is from my years of experience as a financial coach, and any information that's omitted or not completely accurate or maybe current up to date is my error. So please consult with your business attorney or tax a professional to obtain advice regarding your specific situation. That's always the best key. So perhaps you have a business that's already been running for years, or maybe you're starting a business for the very first time. The first step is going to be the same for each, which is research. Doing the research for the feasibility of your business. And when you're looking at feasibility, this is basically, in other words, considering all the information that's necessary to really evaluate the likelihood of your business succeeding. So it could be that, like I said, you've been in business for a long time and you've already been making sales and you know that your business has been successful. But maybe something happens and there's a change. We just went through a couple of years that were very, very different, right? Very outside of the ordinary. And so when we have a situation like that, such as the pandemic, we had shutdowns, a lot of business owners had to pivot and change their way of doing business. So doing the research to understand changing market trends, understanding your industry, all of those different aspects of understanding business is going to help you have and be able to put together a good plan. So the second step is creating a plan, which would be your business plan. And a strong business plan will serve as your roadmap for decision making when it comes to structuring, running, and growing your business. So a well thought out plan could also include an emergency strategy or an emergency plan for any kind of changes that do happen in the marketplace. So how do you address sudden changes in the marketplace? Those types of things can be really helpful to be included into your business plan as well. So if you need help with either of those first two steps, I'm going to be giving you some resources at the end of the presentation that you can use for help in those areas. But tonight we're going to be focused on the third step, which is choosing a business structure. A business is a legal entity. What do I mean by that? Well, it can own property. So your business, for example, let's say you have a business that is a woodworking business that builds quality furniture, for example. Your business can own property. So maybe you have a delivery truck, or you own a building where you operate, or perhaps a warehouse where you store supplies in your inventory. You've probably got machinery like a woodcutter or a sander and different machines that are specific to your business. Those are assets, and those are going to be valuable to your business. So it is property that your business owns. Your business can also hold bank accounts, right? So hopefully, if you already have a business, you've got your business banking account set up with BECU, you've got your checking account where you write checks or you move money in and out on a daily basis for operations, your operating expenses. And maybe you have your savings account, your business savings account, where you're stashing money away on a monthly basis. Maybe you're saving up to put money down on a new delivery truck, for example. So that's one of the good key things about owning a business is that it can hold bank accounts. And one thing that is really important to mention when we're talking about bank accounts, and this can be discussed more later with BECU, but it's really important. If you are a business owner, no matter what entity you have, you should always keep your business funds separate from your personal funds. So two very separate bank accounts that are clearly show a line between your business and your personal funds, and you can transfer between the two if you are taking income from your business, but you want to create a very clear paper trail between the two. If there are any questions, should you have an audit or any other type of need to show support of the separation of the two. If you have a business, guess what? The business is required to pay taxes. So a business, we're not going to spend too much time getting into taxes tonight, because taxation is a whole different huge topic that we could spend hours and hours on. But businesses are required to pay taxes. And a business not only will be required to pay federal income tax, but you might also be required to pay state taxes, a state tax such as the business and operations tax. Sometimes you even need to pay local city taxes as well. And it really depends on where you do business. And of course, too, if you're selling retail and you're collecting sales tax, then you have to be paying those types of taxes as well. And that's where it's also very helpful to have the separate bank accounts to be able to keep track of all of that. So again, we won't be getting too far into taxes tonight. We'll cover kind of the bird's eye view. And the important thing to remember is the value of having a trusted relationship with a business tax specialist to guide you in this area. So I want each of you right now to just take a moment and think. I'm going to give you post some questions to you. You don't necessarily need to write them down, but be thinking about the answers. Maybe you don't know the answer off the top of your head, but think about these things. Ask yourself, does your business have partners? Do you have employees? What is your annual revenue or your net profit? Does your business own property? So just like the business we were just talking about, do you have equipment, machinery, vehicles? Where do you conduct business? So for example, are you just in Washington State? Are you looking to expand outside of Washington into other states? So the answers to these questions, and these are just a few to get you kind of thinking about it, but the answer to these questions is going to help determine and lead you to which structure is best for you. Here's where we get into the good stuff. So we're going to be looking individually at the common business structures. We'll be talking about sole proprietorship, general partnerships, limited liability companies, otherwise known as LLC, and corporations. And you'll see that there's two types of corporations. There's the S corporation and the C corporation. And for each of those business types, we're going to be looking at each one through the lens of ownership, difficulty of formation, fees and tax treatment, and risk exposure. So with ownership, who's in charge? Who's in charge of your business? And difficulty of formation is going to be, how easy is it to set up? How easy is it to maintain? What are some of the requirements? Do you need to pay state registration fees? What about attorney fees? How easy is it to remove members? What kind of risks are out there? So with each of those lenses, we're going to consider each of the different types of businesses. So first off, looking at business at ownership, the first one at the top of the list is sole proprietorship. And a sole proprietorship is pretty much just as it sounds. The clue is in the word sole. It means there's one owner. So if you want to have more than one owner, that means you have to change ownership types. Okay, so for example, if you have a married couple that owns a business, only one person would be considered the owner if it's a sole proprietorship. The spouse could work as an employee in the business, but would not be technically considered an owner on paper. Okay. A general partnership would have two or more partners. An LLC can have one or more members. If the LLC has one member, it's considered a single member LLC. And if you have more than one, it would be a multi-member LLC. And then corporations also can have one or more shareholders. So the key for this is when you're looking at ownership, the owner of a sole proprietorship is the proprietor. The owner of the general partnership is the partner. The owner of the LLC are members, and the owner of corporations are shareholders. That's the easy way if you kind of look at it that way. And one thing I think that is really helpful to mention here as well is the idea of knowing who you're going into business with. So as a sole proprietorship, if you are one person and you own your business and you don't have any business partners, you only have to worry about yourself, right? Because you are the sole decision maker. You are the person in charge. If your business succeeds, it's on you. If your business is struggling, it's on you, right? And so you only have to answer to yourself. But if you have a partnership or an LLC or a corporation where you have other people that are involved in the decision-making process, think about who you're going into business with. Is your business partner a silent partner? Are they providing capital? Capital in just, like providing capital investment? Who's making the decisions? And so I just put together a list of some categories or some qualities that you might want to consider when looking at choosing a business partner. Things to think about: whether or not the business partner is financially stable. Are they good with money? Do they have the shared vision with you? Do they have your same goals and values when you're looking at making decisions for the business? Are they trustworthy? Do they have similar experience, or do they have different experiences that they're bringing to the table that add value to your business? And maybe they bring new business relationships, new customers, new connections. And are they reasonable? Do you get along? So those are just some things that you can think about when deciding if you want to take on a business partner or if you want to go it alone. Each of these areas, and hopefully also I should mention that there is a handout that I attached to the chat. So if you cannot see it, I will reattach it as we go along here. It is supplemental information, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention because sole proprietorships and general partnerships are really on the low end of level of difficulty. And there is a chart that, like I said, I'll share with you that kind of puts it all in a snapshot. But the sole proprietorships and general partnerships, there's really not a lot of legal requirements to get one started. So basically, if you said one day, today I'm in business, I'm going to open a business for myself, you could consider yourself a sole proprietorship and you could open your doors and start doing business with a few key pieces in place. So it's very easy to get started, and it's really the default for all small business structures because there's really not much needed to get started. It's very easy. A general partnership is also very easy because there's very few requirements to get started. But one thing that you do need to have in place, and apart from a business license, because that's the key, you have to have a business license for any business to be in operation in Washington State. Okay, so that goes for all of the businesses. But apart from that, when you're looking at having any kind of legal document, stating that you're in business. As a sole proprietorship, you really don't have anything that you need to have drawn up. But with a general partnership, yes, you should have a partnership agreement in place. Okay. And that partnership agreement would essentially spell out what's the percentage of ownership between the partners. So if it's a 50-50 split, which is typical if there's two partners, that would be stated in the partnership agreement. That is usually drawn up by an attorney. Doesn't have to be very complicated. So it's pretty simple to have set up. So that's why they're on the two at the top there are really the easiest. The sole proprietorship and general partnership are really the easiest to establish and don't require a lot of work. An LLC, on the other hand, is considered medium level of difficulty because there are some formal requirements to get set up and to register with the state. So we'll be covering that in future slides, but just realize that they're considered more of a medium level of difficulty. And corporations then are going to be on the higher end of difficulty to set up, because depending on the corporation that you do establish, there's going to be potentially some attorney involvement to get your paperwork ready. Not only do you have to have annual filings that we'll talk about, but there's certain things that have to happen every year to keep your business in good standing and operating. When it comes to fees and tax treatment, sole proprietorships and general partnerships are still at that end of the easiest, okay? The least complicated. And the reason why is that those two, sole props and general partnerships, are not taxable entities. So what does that mean? And this is where we do talk a little bit about tax, okay? So income earned as a sole proprietorship business or a general partnership is passed through, meaning it gets taxed at your personal level. It's your individual tax rate. So if you already own a business and you're already having your taxes prepared each year, your income is going to show up on your Schedule C, which is an attachment to your 1040 tax return. Okay, so you're going to be reporting your income there. So there's no tax benefit to having a general partnership or a sole proprietorship. But however, so if you're a sole proprietorship, here's the thing, we're going to talk about Social Security numbers here. If you are a sole proprietorship, you can use your Social Security number to run your business. You do not need to have a separate tax ID for your business set up if you're a sole proprietorship. Now, here's kind of the trick. We all have a Social Security number, right? Or a tax ID number that we use at an individual level to report and pay taxes with the federal government. Well, your business also has to have a way to identify itself with the federal government. If you're a sole proprietorship, there is no separation between your business and you. You are one and the same. You are your business. If you are a general partnership, it's very much the same thing in the sense that you are your business because you are paying your taxes for your business, for the ownership of your business at your personal tax level. However, because there's two people involved, you're going to have a tax ID number specific to your business, which is called an employer identification number, which is an EIN. The EIN operates like that Social Security number does for us individually. An employer identification number is essentially like is a federal tax ID number for your business. So again, a sole proprietorship can use a social security number to run the business, whereas a general partnership, because there's 2 or more people, needs to have an employer identification number. There is one kind of catch. If you are a sole proprietorship, you don't have to use your social security number for your business. Okay, so you have a choice. You could still open an employer identification number or an EIN. And a lot of sole proprietorship businesses will do that because it adds a level of anonymity and privacy so that you're not necessarily having to give out your social security number and for business. If you have employees as a sole proprietorship, then you do need to get an EIN or an employer identification number. The EIN is not going to be linked to your social security number. And one other thing that is also kind of important to note here is that if you are a sole proprietorship and you have multiple businesses that are also sole proprietorship businesses, you can only open one EIN, okay, in terms of that's as a sole proprietorship, because there is going to be, there's got to be a little bit more separation by having other entities. So basically that means that you would have several businesses that operate under your social security number with one EIN for your business, maybe that has employees, for example. Okay, I'm going to go over the limited liability company and then corporations, and then probably it's a good point to stop. And if you do have a question, please put it in the chat so I can address it, because I know it can get, we start to get into a lot of the details, and I want to make sure that if you have a question, it gets answered. So please put that in the chat. Okay, so I need to finish one other thing about the general partnerships, that when we're talking about fees and tax treatment, and I mentioned that the general partner is going to pay taxes at their individual tax level, okay? The partnership will have to prepare what's called K1s. And the K1 is how the partnership reports income to the partners. So it's not too complicated, but it is an added step that needs to be done if you have a general partnership. And so again, you do need to have an employer identification number for your business if it's a general partnership. With an LLC, you'll see on the screen here, an LLC is not a taxable entity. It is a pass-through entity. So you're not taxed at the entity level. Again, income and loss is passed through to the members. LLCs by default are taxed as sole proprietorships if there's only one member, or as a partnership if you have multiple members. Okay, so if you have your accountant helping you out with this, they can really guide you through that whole process to make sure that everything is filed correctly. But sorry about that. But it is, the key thing is to realize that it is a pass-through entity and is not taxed separately on its own. You do need also, in the case with the LLC, you do need to have an employer identification number as you, regardless of whether or not you have employees, because it is a separate entity in the sense that you are creating a bubble and a distinction between your business and you. And that's the one big difference, I think, and that we're going to get into with risk when we're looking at risk. At the risk factor is that if you have a sole proprietorship and a general partnership, there's no separation between your business and you. But there is a separation with an LLC because even though it's not a taxable entity, it is an entity that is separate from you. You are creating a bubble around your business. So you do need to have a tax ID number for your LLC if you have more than one owner. You can use your social security number if you are a single member LLC, but many will select having the EIN number just to make sure for privacy reasons. And then lastly, corporations. Corporations are a taxable entity, and earnings are distributed to the owners in the form of dividends. Taxes are going to be filed on a separate tax return, and corporations, they've got their own tax rates. It's a whole different animal. It is completely separate from you as an individual. Everything about it is separate. And that means that there's going to be separate tax returns, separate tax ID numbers. Earnings and losses are going to be reported differently and distributed differently as well in the form of shared dividends to the owners. So that was a lot of information right there. I want to just pause and see if you have any questions about anything that I've just covered to this point. Otherwise, I'm going to think I'm just covering everything very well and nobody has questions. But if you don't feel comfortable voicing it out loud, feel free to put it in the chat. I want to make sure that I answer any questions that you have.
Joanna, this is
Yes.
Jennifer Love.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I do want to just clarify to make sure that I understood correctly.
Yes, please.
With a partnership or
Yes.
the sole proprietor where you are using the EIN, you can only, was it the sole proprietor that can only have one EIN, but you can use your social security number for multiple other
Yes.
entities?
Yes.
But
That is my current understanding of
okay.
how it's set up. That one EIN can be established per proprietor.
But if I had three different LLCs, I could still get a separate EIN for each of those as
Yes.
long as it's
Yes.
designated the LLC. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you for asking that,
Mhm.
because that's always good. It's always good to know exactly when we're looking at the different types of entities. I think almost even a rule of thumb would be good to look at the fact that just for the sake of keeping things really separate, because you could have a different EIN number for all of your businesses if you wanted to. But if you are a sole proprietor, just like Jennifer was asking, if you have multiple sole proprietorships, then you can only have one distinct EIN and then would need to have your social security number associated with the other businesses. So you'd be looking at opening another entity if you needed to have employees, or you wanted to have additional EINs attributed to your business. Okay, now we're going to look at risk exposure. With the sole proprietorship and general partnership, you have unlimited liability. That means you are wide open to risk. And this really goes back to who you're, knowing who you're in business with, and being able to really have a good understanding of who you're doing business with ahead of time. Because as a sole proprietorship or a general partnership, that means that you have unlimited personal liability for all of the business debts, including the acts of employees. So you are responsible personally for things that your employees do. Okay, so there's no separation between business and you personally because you are your business. So there's no protection there. It means the risk is wide open. In addition, in a general partnership, you also have unlimited liability and personal liability for the other owners. So think about what that could potentially mean. If somebody gets in a car, if one of your business partners gets in a car accident and they're being sued, they could potentially come after the assets of the business, right? And you are your business, which means that would include your ownership in that. So you're not protected. So keep that in mind when looking at having your business operating as a sole proprietorship or a general partnership for a long amount of time, because you do have unlimited exposure and personal liability when it comes to those types of damages. The opposite is true with a limited liability company or a corporation. So an LLC or a corporation is going to essentially form that bubble of protection around your business. So it's going to separate you personally from your business, which means that you're not going to necessarily be personally liable for the LLC's debts. That means then that the LLC creditors could potentially go after the LLC bank accounts and other property that's owned by the LLC, but they can't go after you personally. And the same was with the corporation. So if the creditors of the corporation, they can go after ownership or property of the corporation, but not to you personally. So it's one way of putting a layer of protection between the two. So corporations also offer personal liability protection in that manner. Those two types of entities are very, very commonly used for that purpose. Now, one thing I do want to mention here as well that's very important to note, beware of something called the personal guarantee. Because even if you're a business owner, you have an LLC or you have a corporation, and this is something that maybe one of our BECU reps can talk about, if anybody has a question about this later, but if you sign a personal guarantee, maybe your business doesn't have any credit yet, your LLC doesn't really have much credit yet, so you sign a personal guarantee. In that sense, you are taking personal responsibility. So just keep in mind, a personal guarantee is going to open up something different in the sense of taking responsibility at a personal level. So here's that sheet that I was talking about. That's the worksheet, or the handout is in the chat. And I'm just going to reattach it for those of you who maybe can't access it. If you didn't come in right in the beginning, I'm not sure if you can access it. So let me just reattach it. There it is. You can download that and save it. It's going to show a larger version of this particular handout that I have up on the screen. And really, this is a tool to help you visualize. Far left going to the right gets from simple to a little bit more complicated, with each of the characteristics of the ownership structure going down the left-hand side. And we've covered a lot of that already, but we're going to go further into talking about registration with the state and a couple of other operational requirements as well. So hopefully you have that in the chat. You can download that to save. Just want to pause real quick before we go into 5 basic requirements for starting an LLC in Washington. Did anybody have any questions to this point? Okay, we'll have more time at the end if you think
Actually,
of.
Joanna,
Oh,
it's
yes,
Michelle, and I
yes.
do
Hi,
have a
Michelle.
hi. I do just want to kind of point out something when you're talking
Please
about being
do.
aware of the personal guarantee. When you do business lending, especially at the beginning, the person, well, pretty much for anything other than maybe some other organizations, but the personal guarantee is going to be required. So it is something, yes, it means that you're responsible for that lending, but it also means that it's that you can get lending. So it's something, when we say beware, it kind of sounds like it's a bad thing. It's not. It just means that you're also
Exactly.
guaranteeing it.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Sure.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's not a bad thing. It's just that you are taking on personal responsibility. And so to be aware, maybe that's a better way of saying it. Be aware that you are taking on personal responsibility, but if it's a requirement and that's the way to get funding, then that is a necessary step to move your business forward. So thanks, Michelle, for bringing that up.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, so the basic requirements for opening an LLC in Washington. We're going to look deeper into each of the different requirements. So these are things that you need to have handy and you need to have in order to go through the process of opening the business. So the first thing on the list is to name your business, name your company. So maybe it would be helpful to do a search on the Secretary of State website to make sure that that business name is available and not being used currently by a different business. This could also involve doing a browser search for domain names. Maybe you have a really great name that you want to use, but the domain that you would want to use isn't available. So maybe you need to tweak it a little bit. Select a registered agent. What is a registered agent? Well, a registered agent is a person in Washington State with a Washington address, who is active and in good standing. Anybody can serve as a registered agent. It does not necessarily need to be a third party, but this person is going to be entrusted with receiving any legal documents on behalf of your business coming from the state. So a lot of businesses, LLCs may just, the single member may be listed as the registered agent. One of the members may be the registered agent, or there's also a lot of different companies out there that may contact you offering this service. So the registered agent doesn't necessarily, like I said, need to be a third party, but you can pay somebody to fill that role if you choose to, or you can do that yourself. File your certificate of formation. So the certificate of formation, that's going to be done on the Secretary of State website. We'll talk about that shortly. It can be filed online or by mail. It's basically going to just name who the members are and the basic information like the name and the address, the contact information of your business is going to be part of that certificate of formation. And the SOS website walks you through that process very, very clearly. But number 4 is something that you will probably need to get help on. And so ahead of time, you're going to have to create your operating agreement. So the operating agreement is going to be a legal document. Doesn't necessarily have to be complicated. It does typically include such information like who the members are, how the ownership is structured, how it's managed, how the members vote, how profits and losses are shared among members, such as percentages. And the operating agreement can be just even a few pages long. It really doesn't need to be a very lengthy document, usually handled by a corporate attorney or a paralegal service. But again, like I said, it really does not need to be too complicated, depending on the complexity of your business. It certainly could be more detailed depending on how complex your business is, but it doesn't have to be. Comparing that to the steps for corporate formation, a lot of it is this a very similar process in terms of what you have to gather and have ahead of time. Number one, you need to file your articles of incorporation, also known as your certificate of formation. So it's very much like the LLC, where you have the names of your directors, the number of stock shares that you're issuing, the basic information of what your business is. And also for a corporation, you need to select a registered agent. Same rules apply as for the LLC. And number three, corporate bylaws. The bylaws are going to serve as the roadmap for your business. So it's going to set out a chain of command by establishing the management structure. It's going to include your basic rules of conduct for the corporation's business and affairs, anything regarding dispute resolution. So that is going to be much more of the roadmap of really how to run the business itself. That is going to be something, that document is a legal document that you are probably going to need to hire a corporate attorney for, or paralegal service as well. The organizational consent is that document is essentially putting up the initial consent of the board of directors that you're going to adopt the rules that you've set forth, and that you're electing officers. And that document is prepared also kind of in corporation with the the corporate bylaws. It's all going to be kind of put together in a package for you, again, by the attorney or paralegal service. So those are the types of things you probably won't want to try and do on your own. And I'll explain that a little bit further on. Your business, again, you're going to need to get your EIN, your federal tax ID number, that employer identification number. You're going to need to get that set up at the IRS. And also for all types of businesses in Washington state, you will need to have a business license. And I'll mention where to do that coming up next. Okay, registering with the state. Sole proprietorships and general partnerships, because they're not technically separate entities, right, in the way that an LLC or a corporation is, they do not need to register with the Secretary of State. And you'll see that the Secretary of State website is listed above, sos.wa.gov. And you can file pretty much everything you need to open your business right there in one place. It's very simple, and they've made the program pretty easy to navigate. So you're going to select your business type. That means basically your business structure, and you're going to file your initial report. So in that initial report is we're going to upload all of the documents that you've just prepared that we went over in the previous slide. And your business is going to be given something called a UBI number. The UBI is your Unified Business Identifier. It's a 9-digit number that is issued to individuals and companies that are doing business in Washington state. So much like your EIN is a federal tax identification number, the UBI is given to businesses so that the state of Washington then can identify who your business is, and you'll be using that number to pay any state and local taxes. So each business will have a UBI for the state level and a tax number, either your Social Security number or EIN for the federal level. You'll need to select a duration for your business. And it's interesting, right? Because most businesses, I'm thinking, oh, it's just going to be, you're going to select perpetual forever until you dissolve your business. But you also actually have the option of selecting a number of years that your business will be open. You could even choose an end date if you would like to do that. You are required to add a governor who is a trusted, or you can add a trusted person that also has an address in Washington State. And this person could be yourself, or it could be a third party if you choose to. The nature of your business is a characterization of the type of business you have. And you could select any lawful purpose. That is a common and acceptable nature of business, but you can also select a specific industry or type of business from a list that is available on the website. Your business name and address, you need to have that information ready to go as well. And I should mention as well that your business name, one thing that just going back to the LLC or the or a corporation, when you're giving your business name, if you're an LLC, the initials LLC need to be part of your business name. So you could have it literally be LLC at the end, or L period C period. And if you have a corporation, you would need to include Inc. or incorporated at the end of your name as well, just to distinguish and to identify that you're a corporation or an LLC. Next steps. So once you've done all of that, you will be led to and directed to the Department of Revenue's Business License Wizard, which is a great tool for new and existing businesses. And I've got the website up on the screen there. It's dor.wa.gov. And this website, they've got the Business License Wizard is super helpful if you have no idea what type of business license you need for getting your business started, or if you're adding different lines of business, or maybe potentially adding additional cities that you want to operate in, the License Wizard will help lead you through so you can get the right type of license that you'll need to operate. Some cities require it, whereas others don't. So if you go through the wizard, they'll ask a series of questions and help you determine whether or not you need to get local licenses or permits, different things for the type of business that you have. And then also, if you are an LLC or a corporation, you will need to file an annual report. So the annual report will be done on the Secretary of State website each year. You want to make sure that your address is current with the state because you will be getting your notification each year that is due. It's really important that you do file your annual report each year on time, because if you don't, and I've had people, this has happened too, they don't realize that their LLC was administratively dissolved, meaning they didn't file their report. And so the state goes through and sees whose businesses are not currently active. You may even have a business license, but if you didn't file your annual report, you could potentially be administratively dissolved. If that happens, it's not the end of the world. You just have to go through the process and to reinstate the business and get it started again. But that's why it's important to have somebody trusted, a trusted person listed as your registered agent, so that you can stay on top of those types of administrative requirements. All right, let's talk a little bit about fees and expenses, and then we'll wrap up with questions. So the Secretary of State is going to require an original filing fee for LLCs and corporations. That fee is $180. This is as of this year. I think it's been pretty stable. I don't necessarily think it's gone up in price. So $180 is that initial filing fee, and the annual report filing fee is $60. And I checked with a local attorney to find out what the current fees are for attorney services. And so remember, going back to those earlier slides when we were talking about setting up your operating agreement or your corporate bylaws, depending on the complexity of the type of business you have, attorney's fees typically could range between $300 and $600 an hour. So it, definitely ask ahead of time what the estimated cost would be to set up or prepare those types of legal documents. And also, if you choose to hire a registered agent, remember, you don't have to, but if you choose to hire a registered agent, then there is a fee for that service as well. There's also, I know when I opened my LLC, for example, I started getting a lot of mail coming with fees, or excuse me, with services being offered for a fee. And so just be conscious of the fact that you could potentially get offers of different fees that are being, or excuse me, different services being provided, so that you can determine whether or not you need to pay for that service or if it's something that you can do for yourself. But that being said, I think it's really important to know when to ask for help. I know that going through business classes, and you start looking at the expense of a lot of things, and you may be thinking to yourself, well, I can put that agreement together, or it's not too complicated, or I can do this and I can do that. And that's great. There's a lot of things that you can easily do on your own, such as applying for your EIN with the IRS website, applying for your business license, setting up your state registration by doing your certificate of formation or articles of incorporation. Those are all things that maybe you feel that you can do on your own. But when it comes to things like drafting your operating agreement or your corporate bylaws, even when it comes to doing your taxes or doing tax planning or strategizing, think about and weigh the cost versus the benefit of really hiring somebody who knows what they're talking about. As I mentioned earlier, I am not a tax attorney, a tax accountant. I'm not an attorney. And so I rely heavily on professionals that specialize in those areas to offer me guidance or offer advice that are specific. So each person's situation is going to be very different. And so it may be that you invest a few $100s up front to just meet with somebody and get your questions answered, and then determine where to go from there. A few resources are the Secretary of State website, sos.wa.gov. And as I mentioned, also the Department of Revenue. The Department of Revenue, there's a lot more happening on that website than before. You can do the business search on there. You can look up other businesses. You can see if your business licenses are active or inactive, where you've got different locations listed for your business if you have one already. And that's where you get your licenses now. So everything is one-stop shop, and that's also where you pay your taxes, your state taxes. So as a business owner, you'll be using that website quite a bit. And then, of course, the IRS website for getting set up with your tax ID number is listed at the bottom. You might also be asking yourself, well, gosh, this is a lot of great information tonight, but where do I really get started? Looking back on those earlier slides, talking about the first two steps of research and planning. Maybe you're not really ready to jump in and start and open an entity. Maybe you're still kind of at the sole proprietorship stage, just really starting to dip your toes into the world of being a business owner. Or maybe you've got that burning desire to be an entrepreneur. Well, some of the resources on the screen here offer some really great training opportunities. As I mentioned, I'm an instructor with Ventures, but Business Impact Northwest and SCORE, Craft 3, El Centro de la Raza. There's opportunities for learning from local business partners. And I can tell you that with BECU and the partners on the screen there, you're going to get all of the support that you need to feel confident in opening a business in Washington State. I've personally had a lot of experience with the organizations listed, and not only do they offer training opportunities and support in multiple languages, but they also offer support in getting, startup funds and a lot of different help and resources in different areas. And of course, we've got BECU with us tonight because we are here coming together, BECU and Ventures, to bring training content that I really hope you found useful. And so I just want to take a moment now to open it up for questions, and go ahead, hit me with whatever you've got, any of those burning questions on any of the information that we may be touched on, and any questions specific for BECU. Now is a great time to do that. I will tell you that I do have, I have had questions come up in the past, and please interrupt me if you think of a question. Going back to the idea of, I've been in business with a business partner. I have an LLC, but one of my partners wants to leave. It's a lot easier to go from being a sole proprietorship to an LLC or a corporation, because you're kind of going along that progression of growth. But it's a lot harder to go backwards, because you have to basically dissolve existing agreements and existing documents to create a new entity. So really think long and hard before going into business with someone, and see the level of commitment in that business partner, so you can kind of see what's ahead of you before you make that big jump. Michelle, Jennifer, do you have anything else that you want to add this evening? So it doesn't sound like we're getting any questions tonight. Hopefully somebody will think of something if they have a burning question, but do you have anything that you want to add this evening?
I'd actually just add one thing when you were talking about the business names.
Yes.
And how you name it, and even to the point of L period C. It is super important that it's consistent to everything that you do. Because if you change, let's say it's, Ventures Designs, just to throw out the name there, and you do Ventures Designs on DOR site, the Department of Revenue site, but you do Ventures Design singular on the Secretary of State site, it really can make a huge difference and kind of stop you in your tracks, and can cost you money to fix. So just being consistent is really important.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Unfortunately, we see that quite often. So.
I bet. And then it holds things up, right?
Yeah.
It makes everything stall, because then you have to go through all sorts of levels to verify which is which. Well, I just want to wrap up this evening saying thank you so much. If you joined us again live, thank you for being here. If you're watching the recording, we appreciate it. And on behalf of Ventures and BECU, we look forward to serving you in any way possible. And we really value each of you as you're going on this journey. We want to support you in every way that we can. So thank you so much for coming this evening, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Excellent.